fucking terrible.
We're going live now, by the way.
Okay.
I am desperately waiting for the dog movie that is rated R.
Yes.
To come out.
Whoa,
Have you
what
seen
is it
previews
called?
for that, JV?
It's Will Ferrell.
Oh,
and-
yeah.
and-
Yes.
So I was
Yeah.
like watching the preview, like in the theater, we were, and I was like, "Oh, look! Oh, here, this looks like a fun movie. We can take the kids to, and they're the language. I'm like, this can't be for kids, and it is clearly not.
And it's not.
Before we get too far, season 42 of Survivor has one of my favorite people in it. So when you get to watch that, I'm excited.
I've started it already. So who is
the
it?
big hippie?
I know,
I love him.
Jonathan. What a gentle giant. He's
him.
so cute. No,
Yeah.
he's very sweet. I've enjoyed that. I've
He's
definitely
one of my
enjoyed
He's
him.
like one of my all-time favorite survivors.
I
They keep
hope
bringing
they
back
bring
the same
Jackson
people?
back.
What's
the
up?
one that had to go
Real
home
quick.
right away.
Hey, you two people.
Oh yeah.
Hey, everybody.
Ahoy, friends.
Yeah, I'm gonna go pee real quick.
I should
want me to
probably
do
close
something?
my
Do
door
you-
so
do you want me to do
it's quiet.
something?
We're still not starting the podcast
Oh,
yet, so
okay.
you're fine. Yeah, no, we
I gotta get
because
on
we don't
YouTube.
have that ad break anymore. Remember, we just
Oh yeah.
roll right into
Look, I
it.
wrote a whole thing this time, so I'm not winging it.
Ooh.
Very nice.
Unlike last time where I was like, well, I don't know, this new thing here.
I'm gonna go pee.
I hate that. Yeah, no, Jonathan is amazing. Look, somebody else likes Jonathan in there. He's he's definitely one of my favorite.
I'm only like 3 episodes in, so no one told me what happens.
No,
but
love him.
yeah, it's a wacky season so far. Like they got some real characters, and I feel like everyone is so raw and vulnerable in such a sweet way post COVID. Like I'm like, this is what we all need. COVID made a lot of us like share more and be more open and be more compassionate to others, and like I feel like you see that in this season.
The thing that
And
I
in the
love
other
too is all these new seasons, they're like really playing the game now. It's no longer like
it's not
all
really about the
game.
money. It feels like
Yeah.
no one cares that much about the money anymore, which I also kind of love.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Let's see here. All these people. Man, there's lots of people in here already. Holy cow.
Yeah.
We lost Bob. It's not a big deal. I can hear the quail because the door's open. Did the quail come through? Can you hear the quail?
I can't hear the quail.
Okay. Yeah, it's.
Yeah, Zach is being professional. I'm catching up on all the.
Wait, why am I being professional? What'd I do?
So you're just trying to keep the boat afloat, I guess.
Oh, gotcha. I was like, how am I professional? I don't even know what I did. I'm just here.
Teresa,
here,
you're not
JP.
late to the game. I guess I just realized I could have responded. Oh, on the Andy Richter podcast. That's fun. Go Lumberjacks, Chris W. Yeah.
Oh,
Great. Okay, wait. Let me. Now I gotta close my door. I'll be right back.
Danielle just said she finished watching the season of 44 because her and I had an argument last time I saw her in person about it because she was telling me about it, and I'm like, yeah, no, it's over. She's like, no, it's not. I'm like, it ended. She's like, no, it's not. I'm like, I'm telling you, I watched the finale. I could tell you who wins. And she's like, oh, I haven't watched this week. I'm like, I told you.
Teresa, are you making a toast or are you making toast? Because I still maintain there's a difference. And
well, there is a toast to someone is a toast.
Let's
and
see.
making
on
some
my
toast.
shirt tonight because everybody loves my shirts.
Act like I don't know what because I had some eggs and toast. I didn't know what a toast is. What'd you say, Zach?
Everybody likes my shirts, and somebody's asking about my shirt. So it's Dennis Rodman.
Rodman.
Yeah, it's my favorite NBA player of all time.
Oh,
It was fun when he came
So
on
much
the
fun.
scene.
So much fun.
What was
I had
that
pictures-
sound?
It was me thinking of something.
Old Man
that
Ruff?
was out there.
You're like,
and I was like, oh, I
we
need to
should
say
start
this
soon.
thing to Zach, and then I forgot what that thing
Do you love me?
is. I do love you.
Thank you. I love
I'm glad you
too.
come down. Wasn't expecting you to come down today.
I can't.
know,
I
it's so
probably. I
nice.
probably won't be able to do it all the time, but I was just like, I'm gonna try to do it as often as I can. Like if I can make it work, I would rather be here. It's more fun in person.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that reminds me. I can't believe someone came over to my house too. You came over to Bob's and oh hi, it's me, Viola. Hi, Bob, Zach, how are you? Oh, I hope everyone's doing great. I hope you got your
I love
pets and
Viola.
your
So
glad Viola's
glasses.
here.
I love Viola.
Wait. Now bring Janet back.
Hey, it's me. What's
Oh,
happening?
Janet's back.
I blacked out for a second. What I miss?
Hey, did Brandon ever write you back about the submarine?
Yeah. His response was,
What?
I don't
submarine?
know. They've only got 40 hours of air left.
So he
That's what
knows
he
about it.
responded.
He knows
Yeah,
about it. He's just
he
like,
totally
So
knew
once
about
again,
it. I rely on him.
Becky's assessment of a grand total of 9 hours of oxygen, not accurate.
Not accurate.
Not accurate.
Guys, we're not laughing at the situation. That's horrible. We're just laughing at our conversation earlier today, which you can find out about if you join our Patreon. If you're not a member of our Patreon, we have a great time in the hour prior to our record. Come hang out with us. We post that on Fridays on video, and it's great. And that's what we were talking about.
Couldn't have said it any better myself.
Little bit of a fizzle out at the end. A little bit of a fizzle out at the end.
You ran out of gas. You ran
Lost
out of
some
gas.
steam.
Yeah.
Not unlike. Never mind.
I didn't run out of gas.
Go back to the submarine thing.
When did I mention? I
Oh,
haven't ran out of gas in years.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I was gonna say because Danielle was on there, and I was like, did Danielle's sister tell you that she's coming to the barbecue?
She's coming to the barbecue.
And for you guys that are here watching on YouTube,
Are you gonna say she won the NBI Studios listener?
Yeah, the NBI Studios listener of 2023 is well, there was two. There was a tie. Brian and Devin have won, and that gets you a free invite to barbecue at the Rough House. Only drawn from the Patreon, so it's Brian and Devin. One of the requirements is that you have to get a minimum of 5 tattoos from Zach to be entered. You have to be a Patreon member, 5 tattoos from Zach, and what else is or live next to Zach,
Or live next to him.
any of those.
Got it.
You have to have 2
Okay.
out of those 3. You have to have 2 out of those 3, and you could win the
It's pretty good.
listener of the year and come to a barbecue.
I like it.
Very exciting.
Wait, more people
Very
to move in my
exciting.
neighborhood.
Yeah, poor Danielle's not here. Danielle, just so you know, you would have been invited if you were here, but you're not.
Speaking of fizzling out, here we go, getting ready to record in mere moments.
Well, we were like, Becky and I were having a conversation. We built this huge deck behind it. Like, I mean, it's 40 feet by 20. It's a huge deck.
He's got a
Yeah.
huge deck.
I have one of the biggest decks you've ever seen. I can guarantee.
A lot of bush around it, though.
Nobody,
Lot of bush
nobody,
around it.
nobody has a
God,
deck
oh
like
my
my
God,
deck.
oh my
and
gosh.
it's a huge deck. Nobody has a deck bigger than mine. It's a tremendous deck.
It's really like real high.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, sure. I'm proud.
And we're like, we never fucking like twice a year we'll have like Mother's Day over here or something, and then it just sits there with the patio furniture all covered.
Fine hardwood.
And meanwhile, for Becky's
Very good.
birthday last week or 2 weeks ago, I was like, I went to Costco.
Did you see the super chat?
Thanks, Tiffany.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Tiffany, for the super chat. The answer to your first question, did I shower? Need a little more specific. When? Today? No.
Oh,
Yesterday?
oh,
No.
Oh, no.
oh.
Sunday?
Oh, no.
No. Saturday? Yes.
Can we uninvite Devin and invite Tiffany?
Oh.
She might
The
be
super
listening
money.
here.
Did I get the? And she also wants to know, did I get the super money? That I have
No.
to check. I'll have to go
No, you
back and
didn't.
check.
We all know you didn't. It's
Yeah.
fine.
I think there's like it pays quarterly or something. I don't know.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's right. Someone was super helpful last week. Oh, I can't remember who
yeah.
it was, but thank you so much for helping us
Mhm.
kind of almost figure it out.
That was one of my favorite things.
What was I talking about?
A
Oh,
deck.
anyway, we were like, so for Becky's birthday, I was like at Costco, which I never go to Costco. I rarely do any of the grocery shopping. But I was at Costco and they had like big briskets on sale. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get this big brisket and I'm going to put it on the smoker.
Yeah.
And for Becky's birthday on Sunday, I'm going to smoke a brisket. And while
Yeah.
the kids and the family, everybody will have a big old brisket smoked barbecue.
Mhm.
And then I had told her that I did that. And then she's like, oh, well, Bella has to work on my birthday. I'm like, oh, yeah, well, you know, the rest of it, she can come late. And then Quentin's like, yeah, I'm working that day too. Like, well, I mean, have your mom come over and then maybe have your brother come up from Indy. And it's like, no, my mom's going to be in Indy with my brother. And like, well, my folks can come and maybe my brother. And they're like, no, because your brother's getting married in Vegas this weekend. And so everybody's there. And so the brisket went in the freezer. All that just to say, we decided, why don't we just have our adult friends come over in a couple of weeks and I'll smoke this brisket. You
Great.
should know, never smoked a brisket before. So it may be garbage.
It's hard to keep lit.
Cool.
Yep. Teresa, thank you for the super chat very much, and also thank you for not making a smartass comment along with it.
Oh,
that
she
I
was
would have
trying.
Well, I think she
was
already
trying. She just
might have followed
missed.
up with one. Or
No, we we're
that
not.
should have
We're not. We're not going to read it now unless you put a super chat with it.
Oh.
Great.
Nope, that only applies to Teresa. She has
So
to
happy.
pay for me to read any of her smartass comments.
That made me so happy.
Jennifer Hill has deck envy. I get it. It's
Thanks,
that big deck.
Lauren.
It's that big deck energy. Yeah, thank you, Lauren. Thank you very much
big
for
deck
the
energy.
super chat. We appreciate it. Big deck energy. Oh, we're getting very close to Stinky. You got to go in and request it.
Stinky.
I have to go that's super chat from Tiffany. Thank you. I
think she's talking about the money.
Yeah, I have to go request. I have to request the money, and funnily enough, she says,
"You can Google how."
I have to Google how to get Google to pay super chat money.
Yeah. There
Tiffany
you go.
might be my new favorite listener.
Yeah.
Kathy, happy birthday on Sunday.
Yeah, happy birthday Sunday. Just for you, the day before your birthday, I'm going to smoke a brisket and feed it to people who aren't you. Happy birthday.
Amazing.
That's for you. Yep.
Luigi wants to know, is the showering thing a joke? I'm new here. I wish I could say it was a joke, Luigi.
Yeah, I wish I could too. Here's the
Thing,
Luigi.
it's just that Bob doesn't shower very often. That's the joke. And
not even a deck shower.
he'll enjoy it.
Thank you, Teresa. Yeah, so here's the thing, Luigi. Something you might not know about me. I live way out in the country. I don't have neighbors. I don't see people. I work from home. And so I have this bad habit of getting up in the morning, going to the gym, getting back to the office in my gym clothes, and thinking I should take a shower, or I'm not going to see anyone and I have work to do. So I start working. I'll shower tonight. And then tonight rolls around and I'm like, well, now I'm pretty tired and I'm just going to the gym in the morning. So it's like washing your car before a rainstorm. Why do it? You know? So then I did. And the cycle repeats until now. I will be showering. I have to go to a funeral tomorrow. So I will be showering tomorrow.
Listen, I'm the one person outside his household that he sees, and he doesn't wear pants around me.
Yeah.
You sent me a text and told me to take my pants off because you were coming over.
Well, that's true, but
yeah. Quail poo shower. I get plenty of quail poo showers twice a week.
Yeah,
I gotta clean
Lauren,
up
Lauren points out that you do see, in addition to seeing Zach, you do also see your wife and family.
Yeah, I feel bad for her. I do, but not bad enough to
Great
to take a shower.
Great. Yeah. Standing proud on that.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm not a big BO kind of guy. I don't smoke, but then again, maybe I'm just used to it.
Yeah, I'd say that's the more likely if I had to do the math on that.
Yeah. Man, so I'm going to tell you guys in this live chat, we can talk while we're live streaming before we start the show. We're getting very close to. I'm really struggling with the end. I always hate the end of a season because I always I want to conclude and have a big we figured it out and we did it. And usually that's not the case. Usually, and things come back later. Ed's case, then a year later we got him out, and then Jesse's case, a year later we got his brother recanted, and the Westminster 3 case we got back into court 2 years later. We keep working on it, but this one is particularly frustrating for me because I have some information that's coming in, but nobody will go on the fucking record. I can't, and I'm really struggling with I want to share here's a theory of something that could happen based on some of the background information that I've received, but then that's now I'm without even on record sources defaming someone. I mean, from a legal standpoint I can do it without doing that, right. But on a moral standpoint I don't want to do that, and so I'm just I'm just really I don't want to end the season because I haven't got I've never called and emailed and Facebook messaged more people for this podcast than I have in the last 2 weeks. Just desperately trying to get some of these people to talk to me and get on the record, and they're not. But season 13 is right around the corner. I just texted Shane before I got here. Before we started, I was thinking, are we coming with that music? He's on season 13 music. So excited about that. Kelly Zappas, thank you so much for the super chat, Kelly, and a shout out to her fellow AdRip team members. We're almost done. Yes, Kelly, and I don't want to start naming names because there's 8 of them, I think, and I'll forget some. Saints. I don't have my list for me. Oh, they have been working, but like I just see like I'm in their group chat and they're going and like and I saw somebody's like somebody who like was a couple behind and the other ladies are jumping in like we can help you out, we can catch these 700 episodes. Also, you guys should know. I'll talk about the
Amazing.
there's been some clunks with the ads. That's not the ad rip team's fault.
Okay.
But I'll talk about it in housekeeping at the beginning. And with that,
I think you should just throw them under the bus.
I will not. They have
I know.
saved our show because as I mentioned, like I really thought this month would be zero income for this whole month. Why we made the transition, and because they have put so many ad markers in, like there I can see ticking in like some income is coming in, which is allowing me to keep Shane and Kelly around through the end of the season and stuff. And so I appreciate that. And
That's
Kate, thank you
huge.
for the super chat. She says thanks for sharing that. Bob needed to hear.
Yeah.
You're very welcome, Kate, and thank you for the super chat. And it is. I like I said, I always hate the end of a season because we've never had a season where it was like and bingo, we got it.
And we spent so much time on this one.
Yeah, and I just got today, and I'll be reading it on the show, but I just got a statement from Robert and Christian that I'll be reading. I'm working on. We've got approval to have Robert actually come on the show and do it, but it's tricky because there's two different legal teams,
right?
And so they have two different strategies regarding media. One is very much okay with it. The other one is like, we don't want to go with me. I got a very nice email from Christian's brother who kind of handles the legal stuff. Just kind of reiterating, like it's just all we're doing. Our lawyers don't want us to deal with media, and that's it. But we did want to put the statement out.
Right.
And that's very nice, but it's just like
I
want to just one more and I just can't. I can't unless I can get somebody to share some information. So with that said, again, Kate, thank you for the kind words and the super chat. And I think now we can hit record.
Great.
Did you close your door?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Recording. 1, 2, 3. Take her away, Zach.
You had to wait for room silence.
Oh yeah, room tone. Go ahead.
Have we ever gotten room tone before?
We used to. I don't know what we do anymore.
We used to. Mike insisted on it. Kelly doesn't usually say much about it, but we should do room tone because it makes us. Yeah,
it makes a lot. Yeah. Ahoy, friends. Thank you for tuning in to Truth and Justice. You are listening to the Friday follow-up for Season 12, Episode 63, Neighbors. This week, Bob starts to look into the new possibilities on potential suspects. And where did he start? With the neighbors. This episode has drummed up a lot of theories, and Bob, Janet, and myself are here to discuss them.
All right, and thank you guys very much for joining us. A couple little housekeeping things up front. One, there's a couple of posts where people were having issues with ads that were like coming in a different language in some cases, and some that were like a couple people said that they had ads that were like dropping in like in the middle of a sentence somewhere. Just want to let you guys like I'm letting Audio Boom know about those glitches. That is not anything to do with what our volunteers that are doing the ad rips or that Kelly, who does the ad markers for the current episodes as she's putting them out. The way it works is we put a marker in where we want the ads to go. And that's all we do. After that, it is the software within Audio Boom system that is supposed to select an appropriate ad and put it in the place we told it to put it. And sometimes there are just glitches in that software. So, it could have to do, I know one person I talked to like has Starlink, which I have, which uses like a dynamic VPN, or a dynamic IP address, which means it's always saying that you're somewhere other than where you actually are. And so when you download the episode, if you're in Southwest Michigan and it thinks you're in Montana, it might play you a ad for a local car dealership in Montana because it thinks that's where you're there. But hopefully those things will get worked out, and mostly it should be and pretty soon we're going to start having like normal like host read ads that I'm going to read that will just be baked in, that won't be part of the marker system. But this is just kind of bridge the gap for that. So if you're experiencing that, then sorry, I was just on a super chat. Somebody said that they live in Baroda, or a chat that somebody lives in Baroda. Hey, Troy, that's right down the road from us. But anyway, if you're experiencing that, that should get squared away hopefully pretty soon. Otherwise, just just skip on past them and or join Patreon, and they're ad free. The Patreon episodes
Yes,
are
indeed.
ad free, and you get that hour of pre-show chat. Thank you, Angela and Michelle, for the super chats on YouTube. And again, if you guys are wanting to participate in real time, check us out. We're trying to do these on Tuesday evenings, where we record these live on YouTube. And other than I think I want to just bring up here too something that I just very briefly, something I mentioned in our pre-show conversation, which is that we're coming up on the end of season 12. And just to be very transparent with you guys, like the end of a season is always very difficult for me, because of course we start off and we always want to end the season with the a grand conclusion, something that's actionable, that's happening. Even though I know that that's usually not the case, we continue to work on the cases. Look at Ed's case. We ended season 2. It was a year and a half later. Ed got out. Season 3, it was almost 2 years after the fact that we got Troy recanted his testimony. The West Memphis 3 was a couple years later when we got the case back into court. So we continue working on the cases while we're doing it. But this one, just to let you guys know, again, in the interest of transparency, like for alternate suspects, I have a lot of leads. Several of them from several people are kind of pointing in one direction. Very difficult for me to navigate because nobody wants to go on the record. Some of whom are scared. Some of who just don't want to be identified as a source. And so then that leaves me with, if I try to talk about this as an alternate suspect, it leaves me with unverified sources or unsourced material without being on the record, just kind of dragging people's names through the mud. And I'm not willing to do that. As I mentioned in our pre-show, that I can do it in a way on a legal standpoint where it's not illegal, it's not defamation of character or anything like that, but it's still on a moral standpoint. I don't like doing it, and I'm just not going to do that. But also, you should know that I've been reaching out to tons of contact. This was the point in the season where I have the information I need. I know the right questions to ask. I know the right people to ask them of, and I'm just been desperately reaching out to these people and just not getting responses. One of the people that I've wanted to talk to this whole season and now really, really badly want to talk to is Tiffany, for some background to ask some questions and also just to give her a voice if she wants to. And just have not, I don't know if she's getting the messages. I don't know anything, but I have not been. I've tried every phone number, every email, Facebook, everything I can come up with to try to get a hold of her. So just so you guys know, that stuff is going on. Trying to get somebody on the record to talk about some of these issues that are going on in the case. But without that, we are very close to wrapping up the season. I've got another alternate suspect, stuff that is documented that I'm going to discuss this week. And then we're hoping to hear from at least Robert and some of Robert's family. And then we'll probably be wrapping here in the next few weeks unless something breaks. But just know that when that happens, that we're not done. That's just, we hit this point where there are things that are happening, but there aren't things that are happening that I can talk about for 40 minutes every week. And so we move on the podcast to our next endeavor, and then we keep working on it behind the scenes until something breaks open. So that stuff that's coming up very soon. I am very excited about season 13. As I mentioned, it's going to be something very different than we've ever done before, and it is going to be heavily leaning on all of you, where I think we can make direct impact in people's lives. In much shorter form. I'll say that, and then we'll go, and I'll leave it at that, and we'll get into that once we start season 13. And with that being said, let's get back into episode 63. What you guys think about this Jackie Grosjean situation, or this Jackie Grosjean situation?
Yeah.
Well, if you want to start with me, I can absolutely.
Sure.
That's not where I was going to start. I was going to start with some of the other things.
Oh yeah, do that too.
Okay.
Yeah. Start wherever you want.
Well, I think it was really interesting to hear how much activity is going out there, how much police activity is. I mean, how many times they're being called. I think that's something that we needed to know a long time ago.
Yeah.
I think that's something the police should have looked into more. When you hear that there's all these things happening, this party, obviously the woman was picked up. She was not part of this. They know that she was in custody, but just all these things that continue to happen. And that's literally the day of.
Yeah.
So who knows what's happened weeks before. And then the phone calls that he looked up the phone records for 2 months after the murders. That doesn't, you know what I mean?
Looked up for 911 calls to the scene.
Yeah.
And that was confusing to me because it said that the report's dated, I think, December 1st or something like that. It's definitely in December, but it says from this date, from September 18th through this date. And I was like, why?
Yeah.
Well, I don't understand why he was looking at just 911 calls to a burned down house after it was burned down instead of like beforehand.
Yeah.
So he wasn't referencing the neighborhood at all. It was just specifically the house.
Yeah, and for that part of it, he listed in the report that he had pulled all calls to the neighborhood for the week leading up to the murder, and then any 911 calls to the actual crime scene. It says from this date, from September 17th or whatever through this date.
Sense.
Yeah,
that literally just doesn't
I don't
actually make any sense
whatsoever.
Maybe he misspoke.
And the reason the police never talked to any of these people is just baffling to me. Like I don't get it. Like why would you not, especially like the Ellises?
Yeah,
who have a known, I don't want to say problem, but a known problem.
Yeah,
like why would you not go talk to them?
Oh, and what's frustrating to me is the aforementioned, sources that have kind of come forward without going on the record. Like everything I've heard about this case from people that think they know what happened. One, there's a common theme. Two, it all revolves around people in that neighborhood. All of them. There's not a common theme to all of them. There's a couple, but all of them are regarding people in the neighborhood. And the idea for a multitude of reasons, the idea that they didn't go door to door, and like Zach has pulled up right now. If you haven't seen it on our website, there's an aerial image that I put together to give you some perspective on the crime scene. You can see like even there's not. It's not like there's a whole lot of houses there. It's not like let's say the West Memphis 3 case where they had to canvass hundreds of houses. Like to go knock on doors and start talking to people. It's just mind numbing to me that they didn't do that.
No, it absolutely. And I mean, did they give a reason why they didn't at all?
No.
It's disgusting.
At trial, it just kind of there was the prosecutor trying to defend that. Basically just kind of he made it seem like it was an insane request, right? The way he presented it is like, oh, they're just like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you check for surveillance cameras? Like, wait, you can't. He used some analogy at some point. I can't remember what it was, but it was something like, why don't you see if Martians? It was like something crazy like that.
Right.
I don't remember what it was, but it was like this big, like as though knocking on someone's door who lives 300 yards away from the crime scene is synonymous to whatever crazy random thing that they suggested. That's how it was explained.
Right. Just really quickly, I see some stuff in the live YouTube that in the episode, I don't remember, but I guess maybe this conversation about when the dispatch records were pulled, like not the old dispatch records, but the dispatch records that are in question for that day. That it seemed like you were saying they were pulled much, much later, but folks in YouTube are saying that they were pulled the very next day in the morning, the dispatch logs to 911 from that general area.
I would have to, Zach's got him up right now if you can look up and see, because what I saw, the report was written in December. We scroll down to the bottom of that.
So the records could have been pulled right away, but the report, he never, like when...
I didn't see anywhere on there where it said where they were pulled, and if I report,
Kristen says that date is right at the top.
Report date. Oh, I see what you're talking about. Okay, yeah. So above that, up in the header, it says report date Monday, September 18th. Below, right there. Okay, yeah. Yep. So that's my mistake. So the report was written in December. And then of course you have all the dates and times down there. But yeah, underneath where it says data warehouse reports on the top, underneath that it says report date Monday the 18th. So that's a correction, my mistake.
Okay.
They were pulled then. He just didn't write the report until December.
The date on the report is December.
Yeah, which that makes me feel better.
Yeah, thanks y'all. Thanks for that heads up. That's really important. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't weigh in because I just wanted to address that as soon as I saw it, because obviously there's always a lot going on and it's hard to scroll backwards when you're also managing the conversation and the pre-written questions from Facebook. Yeah. So I wanted to get into that, but yeah, there were definitely some clarification questions that kind of actually paves the way towards some other clarification questions that have come up on the Facebook post. Zach, you mentioned in the intro that there were theories. I don't have as many like theories as questions, although there are a couple in here. So I don't know if there was more posted that didn't make it onto the follow-up, but was more just people having theories that they posted on the main Truth and Justice Facebook page. So if I missed something in there and you guys want to bring that into the conversation, please feel free.
Well, let's go through the questions you have, and then we'll see what's left, because there's a whole lot of discussion that's been going on in different threads and different places about what Jackie heard, and what that could mean.
Yeah.
But we'll see what we get through with the.
Yeah, there are definitely. Yeah. In fact, I was going to start with Jackie. So, yeah, why don't we go ahead and do that? Just as a kind of bird's eye view, Kristen says, can you go over Jackie's timeline again? I thought she said when she heard her donkeys, she looked out and saw the house on fire and went to check the Friedleys, and fire trucks were already there. I'm confused about when she heard what she thought was a fire truck to when she went to the burning house.
So she said, if memory serves, that she said she went to bed at 9:30, and it was shortly after. She said she wasn't asleep yet, just kind of starting to drift to sleep. And that's when she said the dog started barking, and she heard what she thought was a car in her driveway. And what's important about that, and it's important you go to the website and look at the aerial photo, is her house sits 200 feet back off the road. It's way back there. So like for her to hear a car in her driveway would mean somebody's like pulled significantly far off the road up by her house. So somewhere, we don't know what time that was. Was it 9:40? Was it 9:50? We don't know. It was sometime after 9:30 is all we know. So the dog barks. She hears what she believes is a car in her driveway, and immediately jumped out of bed, ran to the front of the house, and looked out the window, and there was nothing there. No car, no headlights, no taillights. And so, as I mentioned, she even began kind of questioning her own reality. You can also see in the aerial photo that there's not any obstruction, for a wide angle, like to the east towards the Friedley house, to the west towards Jeroboa Street and all that. Like she can see a long ways down the road in both directions from her window in the front of her house. And there was nothing there. No taillights, no headlights, no car. And so she says, I thought I must have imagined it. She lays back down in bed, and then she doesn't really give a time that I recall hearing as far as when the next thing happened, but said she had laid back down in bed, and then it happened again. Not so much that she heard a car, but she heard the dogs barking, and then the donkeys started baying, and the horses started stampeding, which those are in the front of her house. I believe that the corral where the horses and donkeys are between her house and the road. And the donkeys and horses are going crazy. And that's when she said she went out and she saw the fire. And then again, we don't know how much time passes. She goes down to the scene and the fire trucks are already there. So then she thought, well, that first time she heard a car in her driveway must have been the fire trucks. But again, for a couple of reasons, we know that it wasn't. For starters, they came from the other direction. They didn't pass the house and miss it. And also, again, she says she immediately jumped up and looked out the window, and there was nothing there in the front of the house.
Nothing there, and she had a view and would have seen the fire at that time and didn't?
Yeah, well, no. Looking out her window towards the front, I don't think she would have seen the fire. So her house is, Alpine Drive runs east to west. Her house is north of that. So she went and looked in the south-facing windows, which is where her driveway is, and also where Alpine
the south-facing
Road is.
window. Got it. I thought you said to the east, so I got confused.
Yeah, no, it was the second time she went out and she looked. So the Friedley house is to the west.
I was going to say that wouldn't make sense either. If she went out to the east, she still wouldn't see anything.
Yeah, the second time she went out, and that's when she saw the fire. Because by that point, well, we don't know what time it is, but if the fire trucks are already on scene, then we're talking after 10, 12 p.m., By that point, it wasn't just the fire coming out of the peak. The whole house was engulfed in flames by then, because
Right.
the fire department said the house was fully engulfed when they arrived. So
Hmm.
by then, the whole house was a giant fire, and she saw the fire then.
Mm-hmm.
But she didn't notice a fire or anything the first time.
Right. Ellen wonders, is Jackie still around and able to be contacted today? Not that necessarily she's going to have a better memory, but it's always nice if you can have those.
She is one of those people that I've been desperately trying to get a hold of. I think I found her on Facebook. I friend requested her there, sent messages there, found what I thought were good email addresses for her, and those both got returned undeliverable. Found a few phone numbers for her, and had two different people that actually answered the call. Well, called me back, both of them, only to say, I don't know who Jackie is. This has been my phone number for 20 years, but it's not. They don't know a Jackie. So I haven't been able to get a hold of her either, because I have questions for you. Like, for example, I'd like to know, I don't know the behavior of her horses and donkeys, or her
Right.
dog. Like, I would like, does your dog bark when people, I have one of my German shepherds will bark if a tumbleweed rolls by, like will bark at anything. Or, does her dog bark? Did it bark if someone just drove down the road? Would it only bark if somebody was in their driveway or somebody close by?
Could have been a good question to ask in the moment.
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So she's one of those people that I'm trying to get a hold of. And if I do, so I understand this too, even if we end the season and move on to the next one, if I'm like able to get a hold of Jackie at some point and do an interview with her,
Mm-hmm.
then I will come back and report that.
Right.
Or air, if we do like a recorded interview, we'll air it and stuff, because I very badly want to talk to Jackie for a lot of reasons.
This may be answered by the diagram that you posted, but just in case, Fiona says, could the vehicle that Jackie heard be Barbara Wright arriving home?
I don't think so. And again, these are questions I'd want to ask. So if you look on that diagram, you can see Barbara Wright's route, which she took Jerboa up to Alpine and then turned left on or St. Bernard down to her house. That is well before you get to Jackie's house. So it would be, and again, the fact that she says she heard what she thought was a car in her driveway, presumably she knows what the sound of a car driving down the road is. What she heard was close.
Right. And if Barbara's coming home on a regular basis, that wouldn't seem like an unusual sound if it was her.
Yeah. Again, also not close. I mean, just looking. So I know I had measured from the crime scene, from the Friedley house to Jackie's house was about 300 yards. So that would make probably 150 yards away is the closest that Barbara's car ever came to the house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would give or take. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just estimating by looking at the photo and the scale that I have. But no, I don't think so. I think, and again, that's why I want to talk to her. To me, that's very distinct. Also, by the way, she would look, I mean, I guess the timing wise, maybe Barbara would have already been like in her driveway by then, but like she can look right down the barrel of St. Bernard Street from her front window. Like she would see the car there, and I guess there could be a timing issue there, but yeah, it's, I don't think you mistake a car that far away driving on the road as thinking someone's in your driveway.
Right. So, yeah, okay. So that brings me to Aaliyah and Emma, who both have kind of similar questions about what that would mean otherwise. And does that mean that it would have had to have been a car with their lights off, even though we've sort of had the conversation establishing how difficult it would be to be driving with your lights off? Is the idea that it's based on the conversations we've just now been having about windows, that it would have been something about the sound played off of, like, it's happening in an area that sounds like it could be your front yard, but it is behind her house, but she didn't see any headlights. I mean, I think that's like, there's a lot swirling around there with, why wouldn't she, if she heard it, why wouldn't she have seen where it was, and could it have had its lights off, and what would that mean?
So this is my hypothesis on this, and I say this knowing that there are people out there that will be like, well, that's laughable, and you're just trying to start. But when I'm putting all this together, this is what makes sense to me, and that's all this is what makes sense to me. When she said she heard a car in her driveway, what would make her think it's in her driveway? To me, what would make it, because I live out in the country. what would make me think a car was in my driveway is that I could hear tires going over gravel or something very close
Yeah.
to my house, not out on the road. There's a distinct different sound. It's
Yes.
something driving down the road and some of that is very, very close. Her going out, and yeah, so if we're talking about a car with the headlights off, cars with headlights off still have taillights, brake lights, and she saw nothing. I don't think that would have been missed. It also presents problems for the state again, because if that was what people are presenting, well, that could have been Robert and Christian leaving. See, there's evidence they had left in a car. Well, Bodmer's drive test went the other way down Palm Canyon, where he barely made that time. So if that's your theory, then that means that Bodmer's drive test once again is invalid, because it would mean they went the other direction and then pulled into a driveway and turned around, which would slow the whole time thing down and go a different route. But to me, what I'm looking at is a series of events. The first time, what alerted her? Just her dogs, not the donkeys, not the horses. Where are the donkeys and horses? They're in the front of the house, close to the road. So we have two elements there, to me, that indicate what she heard was not in the front of the house. One, the fact that she immediately jumped up and looked and there was nothing there.
Yeah.
Two, the horses and donkeys, which do get wound up over stuff, weren't making noise in that instance, and they were in the front of the house. So then that leads me to what I think is the logical conclusion, that what she probably heard was something behind her house. And if you look at that crime scene photo, like, there's nothing there. People could leave through the desert and go. And I also want to point out, in the episode, I cringed when I was listening back to it, because at the end I said it could have been in a car or even an SUV. What I meant to say was, or even an ATV.
Okay. We were wondering about that.
Is what I meant.
Yeah.
But that's what makes sense to me, is if something was so close to her that she thought that it was in her driveway, but there wasn't anything in her driveway, then the logical conclusion that I'm left with is that it was someone behind her house in a vehicle. Which then, when you kind of break things down with cars coming from all directions between the fire trucks and Tim and Jim and Barbara, where she was driving, where she was looking, like there was no car on the road. Nobody saw a car on the road. Where could it what could it have been? What makes sense to me, which I've been saying for a long time, is I think that the killers probably are from the neighborhood and they probably left through the desert. So to me, I think, with all of that considered, my theory excuse me. So for me, with all that considered, my theory is that what she heard was very likely the killers leaving the crime scene through the desert behind her house. And again, what I want to talk to her about is, what did you hear? Right? So she said she thought it was a car in the driveway. Is that because you heard a motor?
Right.
Or is it because you heard gravel shuffling around?
And
like
will
tires?
she even remember this long?
Yeah. Luckily, these usually with cognitive interviews, things like that, like sounds and stuff like that, they do tend to stick in your memory a little bit. But like, these are questions that I wish the investigator had asked. Now, this is very early in the investigation. I actually don't even fault them for not, digging into this, but especially because the way she presented it, I missed it too the first time, which was, oh yeah, I heard something pulling my driveway. Then I came out. I'm like, oh, it was the fire trucks. So very likely, the investigator thought, oh well, sure, fire trucks, no big deal. That's not helpful. But when you start breaking down the details of what she said, again, if what she heard was a motor, a car with a motor, then maybe we're looking for an SUV or something like that. If she just heard like gravel crack, like what you would hear, like if you just heard like a very quiet car driving, but it's like crunching gravel and stuff as it's driving, that could very easily have been a couple of people running through the desert behind it. We've been back in that area, it's all sand and rocks and gravel and all kinds of stuff. Could have just been people just running back through there, and she just heard that sound and thought it. So I don't know. Those are questions that we need to answer. And again, that's why I'm not saying like that's what happened. This is proof that that the sound was behind her house. I'm just trying to explain to you my train of thought. It's not that I'm trying to wedge something in to make something fit. To me, the logical conclusion is the sound was in the front, or the sound was close. She thought it was in the front. She saw nothing, heard nothing up there. The donkeys and horses weren't bothered by it. Only the dog was, which was in the back in her bedroom with her. that to me indicates that probably the sound was not in front of the house; it was in the back. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think it's really interesting. I just feel like there's, like, to your point, there are so many variables. I guess I'm not totally willing to even commit that this is significant necessarily. Like, I mean, it seems totally plausible on one hand, but on the other hand, I just feel like there are a lot of variables. And, like, I think, yeah, I would want to know, it's a hot night. Is she someone who sleeps with her windows open? If she
Right.
has windows open to the back, then it seems to me that she would pretty quickly identify that the sound she was hearing was in the back. But if she has the windows open in the front, close to the driveway, that's where she would hear the sound coming from. And that would sound like it was coming from the front because that's where the sound picked it up. So I certainly know that I will go towards the sound thinking it's in one direction. But in reality, all I'm walking towards is the window that allows that sound to get in.
Right.
And the sound is
That's a very
coming from
good
somewhere
point.
else altogether.
Yeah.
So, but I just have so many questions. And you're saying the same thing. I just have so many questions about all of this that it's hard for me to commit to anything, and I'm not saying you are.
Yeah. And there's
because
another element to it too, in the fact that she's half asleep.
right.
So like conscious.
If she is, I mean, did she say that, or was she just like, I lay down on my bed? Okay.
Yeah, she said I was like half asleep, but not fully asleep yet. So conscious me is like, I hear the sound coming from this way, I'm going to go check this way.
Right.
Half asleep me hears a sound, and my brain tells me, oh, it must be somebody in the driveway. Maybe I didn't even assign a direction to it,
Right.
But and I saw somebody in the chat also said that it seemed either way seems kind of insignificant. It depends on the timing. I don't think it's insignificant. I don't think it's anything we're going to be able to like prove anything with.
Right.
But I don't think it's insignificant. If this sound she heard was at the time the killers were leaving, because we know the killers were there till at least 9:46. So if the sound she heard was at the time the killers were leaving, I think it could be, I say hugely significant in the fact that it could have been the killers fleeing. Insignificant, I'll agree in the fact that I don't think there's any way to prove it because of these variables. Now, if I am able to talk to Jackie and maybe she says the same thing, like says, yeah, well, I always slept with the front window open, and I didn't hear a motor, I just heard something, in the gravel or something like that. If we get some more details, it may narrow things down a little bit. Certainly it's not going to be enough to convince somebody that already thinks that they're guilty, and it's not going to be enough to prove to a court that they're not, right?
Yeah.
But
I do want to, and shout out to a couple of folks in the chat. My experience with ATVs, what I admit, is limited to being around them but not being on them. I do feel like they have a totally different sound. Like, I've never heard like a quiet ATV. In my experience, an ATV is like super obnoxiously loud, or it's not on at all. But I could be totally wrong.
I think that's what Bob is trying to get at. Is it's not necessarily about he wants to know what she heard. Was it an engine noise or was it gravel?
Yeah.
Because if it's an engine noise, there definitely is a difference between a car and an ATV. Yeah. But if it's gravel, there's not.
Right. Yeah. But and also that's a big difference. To that point, and I had a conversation with somebody on Facebook about this too. To that point, not all ATVs sound the same, right? So I've had a number of them over the years, and some of them are like with 2-stroke motors in them that sound like a weed eater going down the road. And there are some that are 4-stroke motors that are, designed for like trail riding and racing that are pretty loud. And then there are some of them that I've had that are for like working, that we use for like hunting and stuff, that are pretty damn quiet. My ATV that's out right behind us right now in the garage is very quiet. It would sound like a car driving down the road. So yeah, and so that's a possibility too. It's also dark though. It's hard to, and then people have said, well, what if they were just wearing like a headlamp? Would that be seen? Maybe there's a bit of a difference between a car driving down the road with headlights and a small headlamp way back in the desert away from the crime scene, that maybe when the same principle kind of applies, right? It's very dark, so a light is going to stick out, but if all eyes are over here on the crime scene at the fire, right, and then someone way over here, there's just a little headlight or a flashlight, it's possible. It's always a possibility.
Well, I think it's very plausible, but I think you hit on something earlier, that let's say this isn't an ATV. Let's say this is a vehicle that is turning around her driveway. That still throws a huge monkey wrench in the timing of the drive. Like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. Yeah. If that is a vehicle leaving the Freedleys, and turning around in Jackie's driveway, or stopping in Jackie's driveway and then going back down the hill, you're adding time to something that is already very improbable on its own.
Yeah.
Now you're making it longer and still trying to fit it to your narrative.
Yeah.
I just don't see it.
Yeah, no, I don't either. And to that point, I pointed out somebody was in the chat saying that, oh, Bob's been saying there was no evidence of a vehicle on the scene, and now we have this, and he's trying to spin it, which is exactly what I expected someone to say.
Sure.
But first of all, I'm not saying that. I don't know what we're dealing with here, but what Zach said is also very relevant. Like, as I said at the beginning of this conversation, if your theory is that's Robert and Christian leaving, well, you have bigger problems now if that's the case, you know. So there's a lot to it. And again, that's the reason why I broke down the logic. And what I'm saying is I'm not just trying to wedge something in. That logic makes sense to me. I'm not going to repeat it all again, but again, without the donkeys and horses the first time, there's no car, she doesn't see anything, there's no headlights, no taillights, you know, that it doesn't make sense to me that there was actually a car in their driveway, or she would have saw it. And she seems to agree too, because it was so odd to her that there wasn't a car that she thought she must have imagined it.
Fair. Yes. That's a very interesting key piece of this, that it makes it so much more of a puzzle. Again, I'm sorry to harp on this. I understand that we've been hard on law enforcement, but it was very difficult for me to hear that guy say, I can't think of anything else to ask you, when she had just laid so many breadcrumbs that that all of those questions could have been answered then. Tell me more about this car you heard. This is a major crime that's just happened. We don't know who did it. You think you heard something. Let's drill down into that a little bit more. Where were your windows? What did you hear? What makes your animals freak out? I understand.
What time was it?
It's a you know, post-game quarterback thing, but that's hard because there are a lot of things you could have asked, and I understand they didn't come to you in the moment, but it just feels really, it could have been really important. So that's one of the things that's frustrating to me. Remind us, Jackie was just there? She was there. She wasn't one of the people that came home at some point. She was just there.
Yeah, she was there and went to bed about 9:30.
Okay. And so Corinne and one of our wonderful Teresas just are sort of had a little bit of a conversation on the Facebook about feeling trouble, like Corinne feeling a little bit troubled that Jackie could hear something like two people calling to each other, you know, her neighbors calling to each other in some other circumstance where she could actually hear them, not yelling at each other, but yelling towards each other, like, and then not hearing something as dramatic as, you know, this crime happening or gunshots or something like that, and just being kind of troubled by that.
That's a good thing. We've addressed this before, but it's worth addressing again now, because again, what keeps coming up is, you know, in the effort to try to leave open a possibility for there to have been a car here. Well, nobody heard a gunshot, so and obviously we know gunshots happen, but I can't stress again enough how, like, the way sound travels and the way insulated buildings obstruct sound and what's going on are like, I would not expect if John and Vicky were shot inside the house and then Jackie is because she was home, right? 300 yards away, she's in her. So first of all, the gunshots will be muffled because they are inside an insulated house, which is also soundproofing. So they're already muffled. And then that sound travels 300 yards through the pinyon pine trees and everything in the desert that is all deadening the sound on its way there. Then it hits the outside of her insulated house before it then gets to inside where she's at. That's like, if you were sitting in a quiet room and there was nothing going on, you might have heard something. Maybe wouldn't identify it as gunshots, but you would have heard some kind of pop. Also, it doesn't sound like hearing gunshots is an odd thing out there. But again, but now add in something as simple as the TV was on, right? So
it's before you go to bed, you could have other sounds happening that would obscure that, and then when you're lying down going to sleep, you're
exactly. And again, and I should point out too, it's not just like people for one reason, like some people just genuinely like, how did nobody hear the gunshot? So that's how. And Zach, of course, this is kind of your field of expertise. Like, what in these circumstances would you, if John and Vicky are shot inside that house with a 12 gauge, and also, by the way, the 40 caliber point blank range, that also muffles the sound. But the 12 gauge would be loud.
It would be extremely loud, yeah. But I still don't think that sound would carry through the. I don't think that sound would carry as far as you would believe it would.
Yeah.
And at that distance, I don't know that you would even recognize it as a shot.
Yeah. And then when you have the two so for example, our studio here, the way our studio is soundproofed is because we have an insulated exterior wall, a 1-foot air gap, and then a second insulated wall. And that makes it so that if somebody is mowing the lawn with a lawnmower 1 foot outside that wall, we can't hear it in here because you have 2 layers of insulation that it has to get through. That's why studios are built this way. And that's exactly, it's on a grander scale. It's built out, but there's 300 yards in between them. But again, the sound has to get out of an insulated wall, through space, and through another insulated wall. So it's just, point being, it's not surprising at all that nobody heard the gunshots.
Right.
No, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Joanne, I agree with you. One of the really upsetting things about listening to this episode was just imagining those dogs and how sweet and wonderful Jackie was to say, you know, I'll take them. I'll take both. And hearing that one of the dogs wouldn't leave the house, that was heartbreaking. And, you know, as dog owners, those of us who are dog owners, like, the dogs have been absent in most of these conversations because we just don't know much about what happened other than that they probably got out of the house and were running around. And I mean, of course it's not more tragic than what happened. Of course it's not. So please don't twist my words. But it was very heartbreaking to hear that. And I thought it was very sweet of Jackie to say, like, you know, she's clearly an animal person and she was ready to take on those pups. And I thought that was very special and very sad.
Yeah, and from what I understand, she did end up taking the dogs.
Good. That's great. So some talk about the red truck and whether that timing could work. I saw Nick mentioned it in the chat, in the YouTube chat. I think that's also a question from Kathy a little bit, just sort of wondering, would that timing work? And also, if the timing works, like, where would someone be headed? Like, where would you be headed if you were behind Jackie's house? Like, where would you even go?
So first of all, the timing, somebody made a good post. I don't remember who it was, made a good post about this and was asking a lot of good questions about it. There's again, we have all these unknowns. So regarding timing, so like the one time that we have to work with, we have a couple times. We know the fire trucks got on the scene at 10:12 p.m. Now, you should be able to backtrack that in a normal circumstance. Say, well, if they got there at 10:12, how long of a drive is to the fire station? Say it's 12 minutes to get to the fire station. So it was, you know, they would have got to that intersection around Buckthorn, say around 10:05. And then you could look at, well, the killers couldn't have left any earlier than 9:46. So could they have been, and that timing works. But then throw in the fire Captain Williams says the first calls came in at 9:40. There was 3 calls. They got in the truck and they headed to the scene, and they were already en route when the dispatch came in, which was at like 10:53. I think was when 911 finally did. I think the call came in at 9:51. They were dispatched at 9:53. He said they were already on their way at that point. We don't know exactly when because he didn't get on the radio and say we're en route to the fire, which I also find very strange. I don't know what because that's happened to us before when I was on the fire department. You know, sometimes like you'd get a call, you know, directly to the station saying, hey, something's on fire, which would normally go through dispatch. It would get in the truck, but the first thing we would do is, you know, I'd be in the captain's seat and get on the radio and say, you know, dispatch from engine 20, we're en route to a structure fire at address. Can you strike an alarm for blah 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 or whatever? He didn't do that. He says they were already en route when the call came in. So we have this variable at the beginning. Then we know he gets there at 10:12, maybe a 10 or 12 minute drive to the fire station, but they also got stuck on the way. How stuck? How long were they stuck? How long did it take them to get unstuck? Because from him, so he's saying by 9:45, they're en route. And then it took them 27 minutes to get there. If his timing is right. So were they stuck for 15 minutes? Where did they get stuck? You know, like these were all questions that weren't. So it's a long answer to the shorter answer, which is we don't know. Could it work? Could somebody have left the scene? Which kind of leads us to the second part of that question. If somebody was behind Jackie's house, where could they be going? Well, if you look at that aerial map, you see like Barbara Wright's house there. If someone left the crime scene, went behind Jackie's house, and went just another 100, 200 yards further to the east, which would be the bottom of that photo, than what we see in the photo, you come to where Jeroboa tees into or dead ends into Alpine, and then there's a little drive that goes up. There's a little turnaround area, and then there's trails that go all back through there. So someone could have left a vehicle right there, walked in through the desert behind the houses, committed the crime, walk or run back, get in the truck there, and go. And they would head straight down Jeroboa. And because of where the conflict came in with the red truck and the fire truck, it's so far south of the neighborhood, regardless of kind of which route they took to get out of there, they could have still got to that place. So like they could have left down Jeroboa and confronted the fire trucks in that same spot, or they could have left down Palm Canyon and done the same thing, or they could have left down Chillen Heights and done the same thing, because that just tees it into Jeroboa on the side of the road. So there are a lot of possibilities. Could it work? Yeah. Can we? The reason you haven't heard me harp on the red truck very much is because it was too far away for me to say it was absolutely connected, and there are too many variables to know if the timing works. There are too many unknown problems here to know, which I know is kind of par for the course in this case. But when you have the fact that they got stuck, it wasn't documented when they got the calls, they wasn't documented when they left the station. All these things add up to, I don't know, maybe it could have happened. Yeah. But at the same time, I do acknowledge, because a lot of people will get on, will get mad at me and be like, how can we say the red truck doesn't matter? It was a car. I agree. It would be a hell of a coincidence that on the night of a triple homicide and structure fire, a vehicle driving in the opposite direction of it sees a fire truck coming and doesn't pull over, doesn't get out of the way, but is in such a hurry to get out of the neighborhood that they almost run them off the road. Absolutely, that's a hell of a coincidence, and it very likely could have something to do with the crime. But there's so many variables. Again, I've yet to see any evidence that a car left the scene, but could they have been parked down on the end of Jeroboa? Maybe. Mm-hmm. Could they have been parked the other way? Jackie's thing, the thing at Jackie's house is a red herring, and they were parked over by Palm Canyon. Maybe. Like, you've been out there, Janet. You see, like, it's so desolate out there. There's so many places you could put a car and walk through the desert. There's just there's just a lot of unknowns.
Yeah. So moving into some of the other people in the area, Lynn says, and this is a bit tongue-in-cheek, Lynn says, was Harpo really such a celebrity that fans would have invaded the neighborhood if they knew he lived there, which was part of the conversation with Jackie, saying, he's very well known in the area. And then naturally, Kathy and Vanessa, and I'm sure other folks are wondering if you've talked to or tried to talk to Harpo.
I was busy in the chat. Can you repeat that? And Kelly, of
Sure.
course, don't leave in her repeating it.
So Lynn, I'll probably we don't have to read your question, although I did think that it was funny, and listen, it may be true, but Lynn was just saying, really the people would flood the area of Pinyon Pines if they knew that Harpo lived up there, based on what Jackie was saying. That's entirely possible. That's half the question. It wasn't even really a question, but I noticed that too, and I was curious about that, and it may well be true. I don't know. It sounds like Harpo's pretty famous. Everyone sort of knows when someone says the name Harpo, everyone seems to know about this clown in the valley. But Kathy and Vanessa are representing those folks who are.
Hang on. We got to make a cleaner edit here for Kelly. So are we just taking out whatever the question you just read that I didn't hear?
Sure. Well, okay. I'm going to ask you if you've tried to speak to Harpo. It's as simple as that.
Okay, good. Did you already ask me that?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll just answer it.
Great.
I haven't yet. I did send an email to, like, through his Facebook page or his website. There was an email address, and I sent a couple emails to him and never heard back. That said, I was just asking somebody, because one of our listeners did have contact with him and talked to him, but it was a while back when we were in the middle of doing something else, and now I'm at a point where I would like to talk to him, because apparently he agreed that he would talk to me, and I can't remember who it was that had that contact info. So if you're listening to this and you were the one who was like, hey, Bob, I talked to Harpo and he's willing to talk to you, message me again, please, because I would like to talk to him before we wrap this up.
Great. Well, here's hoping. I'm just going to. I think we're running a little bit long in that I still have a few more questions to ask, but there were some posts. I want to acknowledge Jessica and Kate, as always, and Eris and Aaron, kind of pulling the spotlight back over to Ron for a moment. Still lots of questions about the settlement. Obviously, that's something that is highlighted once again in these conversations we've been having and in the work that you've been doing. Questions about whether the Ellises had some sort of relationship to Ron. There's just a lot of questions still around that, and I didn't know if you wanted to dig into any of that or if those are just big question marks for now.
They're just question marks for now. I think it's best we leave it at that unless we get answers to those questions.
Okay, understood. Thanks for those questions, guys. Rebecca said, and Rebecca, I think you were in the chat last week and I didn't get a chance to address this, but because this is a familiar question to me, but Rebecca says, do you know how quickly the media was on the crime scene or on the scene?
I think they were there that night. I know for sure they were there early the next day. But I don't know exactly when they showed up, but I believe they were there on the scene, like while it was still dark out. I think I've seen photos that have, like the fire trucks and stuff, and there's like news trucks kind of off in the background already. Which is pretty typical. I mean, over my years at the fire department, they listen to the scanners, most of the news agencies. So, like, I don't think I've ever been to a major fire where by the time I came out after, my first time, my first air bottle inside the house fighting fire, when I came out and they weren't already there.
Right. Yeah, that's what they do. And Kristen, I'm so glad you asked this question. I don't know how this falls into the conversation we've had about your inability to get certain 911 records. I know you mentioned it a little bit in the episode, but all I could think was what Kristen asked when you were talking about that angle, which was, are the number of 911 calls that were made that day a typical number for Pinyon Pines?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, and by the way, I haven't just like requested 911 records. Like I've made, and then people on my behalf have made multiple open records requests, and they're just not open to sharing that information, any information. It seems like with this case.
Yeah.
So
I feel
know.
like
And
that's
if
very
it wasn't-
California also, right? Just in addition to not wanting to release something that might make you look bad.
Yeah, it could be, but he said that he pulled records for a week. And then out of that week, all we have is the 3 on that day and then the 1 on Friday. So it seems like it was an odd day, which again is something kind of what to Zach's point earlier, like the idea of them not talking to the Ellis brothers and not thinking like something like, if that was an odd day that all of this was going on, like as the murders were happening in the neighborhood on that very day, it's even more reason to look in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
If it's like, we're always out there we're always out there 10 times a day. No, it was par for the course. But if it's like, no, normally we're not out there at all, and on that day we had to go out there 3 times, and then someone ended up murdered, in an arson, like you start knocking on doors.
Right. Well, I saw someone in the chat earlier say, I don't know why you keep saying that no one talked to the neighbors. They talked to 4 neighbors.
Yeah, they talked to the 4 neighbors that were there at the scene, and then didn't ask any more questions beyond that. Like one glaring question that is the reason that there's such a hot debate. One of the reasons there's a hot debate over this is no one was ever asked, did you see a car leaving or did you see any people leaving? Like that question was never asked of those 4 neighbors, much less anybody else in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Sorry to razz you for those of you who in the chat were saying that, but to me that stood out just because, quite frankly, that's not all the neighbors, and there were just so many questions that weren't asked. So that's a difficult piece for me to move past. But Kate asks,
I just still have a hard time with. I mean, I know we're beating this, but I still have a hard time with that. Why they're literally called for somebody threatening to shoot somebody else, and they do not even ponder questioning them.
Yeah. And like I said in the episode, I don't think Sidney Smith had anything to do with this.
right.
But what they knew is that there was a man in Pinyon Pines threatening to shoot and kill 3 different people 2 hours before all this happened. Don't you think you'd at least want to talk to that guy? And again,
Maybe they did, and they just didn't disclose that and put it into Discovery.
I keep seeing people that will say that.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know how to respond to that other than the. And I know you're kind of repeating some of the sentiment of other people, like, well, maybe they did talk to them, but there's no evidence they did.
Right.
And what a hell of a thing to leave out of your case file that, oh yeah, we did. By the way, we cleared all these people and we never met. And then at trial, when they're hammered about the fact that they didn't interview any of the neighbors or canvass the neighborhood, none of them said, Eichelt and LeClaire, but like none of those people said, oh, we did. It's just not, yeah, we did talk to those people.
Right.
They never said that. They instead said all the reasons why they didn't.
Right. Kate wants to know a little bit more. I think it's I don't know if you posted the location, the approximate location of the meth party or not on Facebook. I can't remember, but Kate was curious about how close the address that was checked for the meth party was to the crime scene.
In a straight line, it was 1.75 miles away. It was, so if you look at the map of the crime scene, I tried to describe this in the episode, but Pinyon Pines is kind of like if you take two squares and they're offset from each other a little bit. So like one slightly, the top one's off to the left a little bit, the bottom one's off to the right. That meth party was down in the bottom square, way over to the right, over to the east from it. So, it was, a 2 or 3 minute drive up to the crime scene, 1.75 miles, straight shot down there. So it wasn't like up in the big area, like when we're talking about like neighbors that didn't get interviewed. And the aerial photo I have up here doesn't really demonstrate that well, but Alpine Drive was, yes, quite desolate. But when you go south, like if you go directly south of the crime scene where like Tim Summerly lived, there are several houses there on those cross streets there that cross between Chillen Heights and Palm Canyon. There's a series of, I think, 3 roads right there. And there are several houses on all 3 of those roads that have a view of the crime scene and have a view of the 2 routes out of the neighborhood. So like those are the people that should have been interviewed and should have been talked to, aside from the further questions that we had from everybody else. But that meth house that was way down in the southeast end of the neighborhood.
Okay. I just want to acknowledge, Casey, your post was a bit of a longer one, and I kind of feel like we covered the majority of it through other questions or just through discussions that have come up. But I want to thank you for your time and effort in your post, and it's fully appreciated. Suki, I also want to acknowledge you asking a little bit more about the ATV stuff. I kind of feel like we have covered that as well. But I'll just end with the sort of part of Suki's post that still stands out to me, which is, just wondering how much stuff these people would have to carry out with them. How much do we really know about what they would have carried out with them other than weapons? Yeah. And how feasible that would be on foot versus like needing a vehicle just to get what you brought in out with you or whatever.
I think the only thing that we know that they had was a shotgun and a pistol.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that could be, obviously, if you're on foot, that's pretty easy to handle, even on an ATV or a bike or anything like that. Would be easy to, the pistol, of course, can just tuck in your waistband and you hold a shotgun. One thing that has always came up for me is the shoe, Becky's shoe that's missing, which I always maintain like the only logical place for that shoe to have been is in the house. That she lost it in the house. It certainly wasn't, if she was killed out in the desert, where in a struggle the way the state says they think that she would be out there. If it wasn't, then the offenders then picked up the shoe with her, carried it back in the wheelbarrow with her, but then took it out of the wheelbarrow and then carried it off home with it, left with it.
Right.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to me. It seems logical that the shoe came off inside the house somewhere, but that would be the only thing we know they carried, right? The 2 guns, yeah. And if you believe they took the shoe with them.
Yeah. Lori, I've seen your posts asking many times about there was someone who posted rather than the person who we hoped would come on, or a person we hoped would come on for a conversation. I know that there was a post on the Facebook page sort of recapping reasons why someone might believe that that these 2 were guilty, that Robert and Christian are guilty. I have not read it. I did not know that had been posted. So I don't have anything to contribute to that. Is there any comment that you would like to make about it?
No, I looked through it a little bit. It's basically the state's argument.
Okay. So for anyone who feels like it's very significant and it's bringing up new information or anything that falls outside of what you have already covered and dismissed through facts or what have you, you didn't, nothing like that.
I would tell everybody that's on the Facebook group to please go read it. I think would be an important read. I think there's information in there that you can assess yourself and see what we have worked on and what Bob has worked on through this season and kind of come up with your own conclusion. But I definitely agree that everybody should go read it regardless of how you
Yeah, I definitely will.
understands.
But I can't bring anything to this right now because I didn't know about it. Okay, that's pretty much what I've got for this week. Do you know where we're going next week?
Yeah. I know part of where we're going next week. It's another lead that came up. It's actually a few years after after the case was cold. There was a lead that came in and a couple interviews about it, and a couple other people that I want to touch on. Basically, it's going to be, from what we have now, any alternate suspect information that we have. If nothing else breaks, I'm still going to continue to be working on trying to get a hold of Jackie and Tiffany and Harpo, if whoever heard that remembers to or hears this and reminds me of who they were, so that I can get a hold of them.
Right.
And so with that, I think that we are good for this week's Friday follow-up.
Sounds good.
All right. Sorry, they said we're getting used to doing these in the evenings, and for us it's like 9:30, and we're like nodding off. So we'll get back around. All right. So with that, we're going to end the Friday follow-up. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for all your questions and comments, and tune in on Sunday.
We do have some super chats to address that. Yeah. Sorry. I'm so sorry, Bob. So sorry.
Yeah.
She fucked that all up.
I really did. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I started talking before like the delay caused me to realize that you were talking. I was like, I freaked out because I saw this super chat, and I was like, and of course we'll address super chats as soon as we sign off. And then I was like, oh shit, he's signing off even as I'm saying these words. He's trying to fucking sign off. So I apologize.
Okay, so Kelly, we'll reset here.
All right, Kelly. Love you, Kelly.
All right, and tune in on Sunday, and we'll got more to talk about next week. And yeah, no, I fucked that up.
So sorry. This is all on me.
All right, so yeah, tune in on Sunday, and we'll have more to talk about next week.
Here
Sounds
on
good.
Truth and Justice.
No, you guys say bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, hit stop the record. Jesus Christ.
Sorry.
I
don't know why I panicked. I blame Brian because I panicked when I saw his very generous super chat. I panicked, and I was like, we have to address this. And I was like, oh shit, we do that after we sign off. So sorry.
I have to pee, and then I'll be right back for these super chats.
This is all on you.
That didn't help also that I'm like, oh, my teeth are floating. I just want to get through this room.
No.
That was fun.
Gross.
Just watch him. I just love that you just like interrupted. He was like,
I know, it was awful. I genuinely panicked.
Hold on.
I genuinely panicked. I was like, the super chats. I'm saying the super chats out loud before I'm realizing I'm talking out loud. Oh God, wait, hold on. We do that afterwards anyway. I'm an idiot. Like all of that was happening all at once. And so now I'm going to panic when I see Devin. Devin, I'm so sorry, Devin. Thank you.
Oh,
I
mean, but Brian and Janet they won Listener of the Year. The two of them.
Who, what?
Co-listener of the
wonderful.
Year. Devin and Brian.
Listeners of the year. How wonderful.
If you listen to Patreon,
wonderful.
you can find out how you can be entered for next year.
Yeah,
or
fantastic.
Next season or something.
Fantastic.
Oh, Danielle.
Great.
Who also has a tattoo from Bob.
Yeah.
She was this close to winning Listener of the Year and getting invited to the barbecue.
This close.
All right, what do we got here for these super chats? I saw that. Brian, you fucked Janet up, but then fucked me up, and
Brian, I'm so happy.
All this just to say sorry I was late. I missed watching the live. I'll set a reminder next week. Good job, always, Janet. Robert and Christian are innocent. Thanks, Brian. And you missed. So if you were late, you missed the announcement that you won. Again, Listener of the Year 2023, and you're invited to the barbecue at the Rough House.
Has nothing to do with the fact that you may or may not live nearby.
Yeah.
Oh,
Brian, Listener of the Year, and then right underneath him is his co-listener of the year, Devin, with a $5 super chat. And she just says, "Here is money for you." That's right. Yeah, we'll put that towards the brisket, Devin. We'll see you and JJ on Sunday. And then her poor sister, who is here all the time except not this time. Sorry, Danielle.
No.
Gigi, what's up, Gigi? Thank you for the super chat. I was late. We'll have to back and watch. Yeah, it was a good one. A little clunky. I was a little clunky tonight. I got to having to pee. Got myself a little clunky. I got really irritated with some people in chat. You may have noticed they disappeared.
Some of them did. Some of them didn't. I don't. Yeah, I don't know what to say but for people who think that I don't give those people a voice because I just sat and did it this entire follow-up, and I genuinely did. So I don't.
I meant
know. I'm
when
sorry.
I said disappeared, I meant the people that were just completely spamming the chat that I removed from it, which is why I didn't hear you when you were asking me a question because I was just blocking people out of the chat.
I've been running like crazy all day, so I'm done.
Yeah,
done for today.
Done for today.
I'm done for today.
All right. If we don't have any more super chats, we're gonna go and wrap this thing up. Zach is done for the day.
I'm done.
Zach's done. Zach's toast. Oh, do you know what toast is, Bob?
Is that like where you take bread and put it in the freezer?
Whoa! Slow down.
It's frozen bread.
Slow down. You're not ready for this yet.
No. Wait.
Do you know what bread is?
Bread. Yeah, it comes in a long tube can. You pop it, and then it's stacked in there.
Are you talking about Pringles?
Yeah, Pringles.
Great.
Yeah, that's
That was a problem. That's a problem.
Toast.
Let's acknowledge these super chats for sure. These are very generous and wonderful, and we appreciate all of those of you who wish you could and can't right now, or all of that. We love you. I just want to quickly backtrack to Terry, who says checking satellite images from NASA.
Oh, I missed that one.
I'm coming back, so it's a little bit out of context, Terry. I super apologize. But in terms of looking at the area, looking at how passable the desert would have been, perhaps that's kind of where Terry was headed with that. And great question. Thanks for the chat, Terry.
Yeah, and by the way, that Terry, that's why I put up the photo I did. So those are the photos they took from a helicopter the day after the murders, because I pulled up just like Google Images, and there are houses there that weren't there at the time of the murders.
Yeah, so there's a house that's fairly close to the crime scene now if you pull it up on Google.
Yeah, well, there's like that weird storage container thing that's next to it, but then down this way, not far from Jackie's house, there's a house there now that wasn't there at the time. So I went through and pulled up these that were taken from then. Caroline just paid $10, Zach, to want to know briefly what you think about that document.
I think whoever put the document together did a really good job and spent a lot of time putting that document together. My feelings on the document are it's the same stuff we've already heard from the state that I don't believe.
The additional part, and when I was reading it, the additional part that they add to that is it's the state's case, and then anything that we've used or I've refuted any of that stuff, it's like alternates to, for example, no car left the crime scene. Well, actually, Bob says no car left the crime scene, but we have this thing at Jackie's house, and it was like the guns. Like I say, show me evidence that they had access to the guns, and they counter with, well, here's pictures of Robert with guns, and here's this, and we know that that he likes guns, and that he has illegal guns, and so he could have had. There's a lot of that. Like
it's nothing groundbreaking. There's no evidence. It's all speculation.
For me, it's just every post I've seen from a lot of the same people in that.
Whoever did it did a very good job.
It was a lot of work, and it's very well organized.
Well, I look forward to reading it. I mean, I didn't ignore it. I just didn't know it was there.
Their little sources to point out where they're coming from, but like I said, it's a lot of speculation. I do. When I said I think everybody should go read it, I fully believe that everybody should go read the document.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I think it's important, but I also think that everything in there has been refuted with what I feel is the truth.
Yeah, to me, it felt like a lot of here's the state's case, and everything Bob said is wrong.
I know that's why you had said you were so, and I understand why someone would be intimidated to not do it, but so I'm not saying that, but you were like, we need to be able to have a conversation about this rather than just someone posting something saying Bob's wrong or whatever, and then not really being able to have a discussion about it so that you can ask each other questions.
Yeah. So that's why I didn't give
but I really appreciate that it was posted. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I just really wasn't giving any oxygen on here, because it's just like reading a long Facebook post. It's what I wanted to do is be able to have where someone could question me and counter me on my thoughts, and I can question them and counter them on their thoughts instead of just typing up, here's all my reasons, and now I'm gone, and now you're just left with reading them. So
Yeah. Well, I know that Zach and I both wanted that, so I appreciate that it was done, and I look forward to reading it.
yeah. And to wrap up our super chats, Jennifer Hill wants to know if we accept bribes for listener of the year. You got to listen. There's 3 things, and you got to have 2 of them. 2 out of 3. You have to be a patron. You have to have had Zach tattoo you at least 5 times, or you have to live next to Zach. So if you have 2 out of those 3, then you're in the running for listener of the year. And then Schaefer James, thank you for this. Thanks, Schaefer. She says, on a budget, but hashtag blastin' toots for the win. So I think I didn't even catch this. I just saw somebody that was like spamming everything, and so I just blocked them. And I think their name was Blastin' Toots.
No, it wasn't. It was something else, and that was like
something close, but
a flub.
Oh, something like that.
Somebody trying to reply to them.
Oh, because I was just getting a piece of that. And then Grayson, thank you for the super chat. Grayson, who says, can't wait until season 13. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much. I'm right. And all the as much as I am like dreading ending this case, because I just haven't. I want a much more solid conclusion than we have. At the same time, I'm just exhausted by. And by the way, so like obviously I have my days where I get pissed off and I just go off on people, but a lot it's just. I think a lot of it's just the same people saying the same thing over and over and over again, and they can never say it without adding in with it Bob's lying, Bob's bias. Like they can't. Like, that just gets exhausting. Like I have no problem with somebody like, oh, you think that? I actually disagree because I think this. I don't have a problem with it, but it's just like this. It just wears on you, and it just get tired, and that's why I get a little testy sometimes.
Yeah.
In the chat, but I'm season 13. I'm hoping season 13 will be something to bring us all together.
Oh, I'm sure it won't.
Together. I'm sure it won't either. With that, we're going to end this.
Hold on. Brian said Michelle and Zach are absolutely the best neighbors, except for it actually says Zach and Michelle, and I just read it as the other way around. But.
Yeah, because
that's so quick. That's like a wonderful psychological peek into your relationship that you put your wife first.
Yeah,
exactly.
You're welcome. That'll be $100.
So say that's what it means. We're going to end this live stream so we can chat with Patreon for just a few more minutes. But thank you guys for joining us. We should be here. I think you guys good next week. Same time, same bat time.
Same bat time.
Are you traveling, JV?
Nope. Same time's good.
Same time's good. Next
Aren't
week?
you in Austin or Boston or Sawston?
It's true that I will be in Austin, but I will be back by
Look
then.
at that. If I just keep naming Sawstons.
Just the